So, first of all, I want to apologize if the audio is a bit faint. I'm currently using the microphone built into my webcam. For those of you who can see, you could probably see the little Raspberry Pi logo on the wallpaper. I am currently running my Raspberry Pi 400, but I am not running Raspberry Pi OS. This is going to be sort of a short vlog of the last nearly almost 2 weeks with my Raspberry Pi. For a bit of a recap, for those of you who do not know, I did get a Raspberry Pi 400 for my summer house. It's going to be staying up here. You probably tell that I'm in a different location because of the echo. I do apologize for that. This system was not meant to be anything, overly spectacular. I still have my Steam Deck on order, and given the fact that I've had it reserved for almost a year, I have every intent to go through with that purchase. And that in itself is a Linux handheld computer, so I will definitely be taking that with me, probably in place of the Nintendo Switch. But it's nice to have something up here in the event that, for whatever reason, the TSA decides, oh, you can no longer carry laptops or handhelds or whatever, if something catastrophic happens. Just knowing that I'd have access to a computer up here, that's the big thing. And it's just, generally speaking, it's nice not to have to worry about your laptop. Having to take it out of security, losing it, that sort of thing. So what do I think of Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi 400 after 2 weeks? Well, again, I'm not running Raspberry Pi OS. I'm actually running, this is going to be crazy. Some of you are going to be like, WTF when I tell you this. I am running Ubuntu Mate with the GNOME desktop. Why on earth did I do that? Well, thanks to my experience with Silverblue. Actually, let me move over here. Yeah, there we go. That timer out of the way. What was I saying? So because of my experience with Blue, I've come to the point where I can literally fly on GNOME. I love GNOME. One of the things that I especially love about it is the accessibility options you get literally to click. You've got a screen reader, magnifier, whatever. Surprisingly enough, the Raspberry Pi doesn't have enough power to effectively run the magnifier. It'll run, but it stutters a lot. I was expecting this to have limits, right? But I wasn't expecting the limits I ran into. So let's back up a little bit. Obviously, this came with Raspberry Pi OS. So I tried it out. There are no accessibility options on board whatsoever. And there is a screen reader, but it only activates in the very first setup. Otherwise, you have to install it manually. The key bindings to what I'm used to line up. I was going to try to take the time to troubleshoot this, but I thought in the end, better go ahead and install something I'm more familiar with, because the Pixel environment, which the Pi OS utilizes, which is based off of LXDE, that is very lightweight and not necessarily, I think, meant for more modern systems. Well, assistive technology does take a bit more horsepower, more than I realized. This is entirely my fault. So what ended up happening was I thought, okay, I'm going to put GNOME on here and utilize that. Well, I was doing some research, seeing if the Raspberry Pi could accept GNOME, and it could, but you had to turn up your graphics memory. Again, noob mistake. I'm being totally honest here. I went ahead and switched up the memory to full blast. Broke the system. Completely shattered. Thankfully, one of my relatives came up from his home, brought his laptop, so I was able to re-image that experience with Raspberry Pi OS. I decided I'm not going to do that again. So I decided, why not do Ubuntu Mate? So, I do have Mate on here. Obviously, it's not running right now. I have been experimenting. The main reason I went with Ubuntu Mate is because where the router is in my place, I'd have to run like 100 or 200 foot Ethernet cable, and I'm not about to do that. I'd have to go behind a couch. It's not easy to do. and an extender wouldn't necessarily be practical, or at least I didn't think at the time that it would be. I'm kind of revisiting that possibility because not all systems compiled for the Raspberry Pi, as far as I know, because I have done a little bit of digging on this, not all of them accept Wi-Fi out of the box, and I would need something to accept Wi-Fi out of the box in order to get it up and running. And at the moment, I wanted something I knew was just going to work, no problems, okay? That's why I went with Ubuntu Mate. They openly said Wi-Fi does work. So that's where I am right now. And I've done further research. I think, here's what I'm going to do. So right now I've got the 16 gig card running on the system. I did that because of a cost. I didn't exactly know what to expect. I mean, I've dabbled with Raspberry Pi OS, but because of the limitations of the desktop variant being only 32-bit, I couldn't do much. So the real experimentation came when I managed to set it up here. And again, to keep costs down, I went with the 16 gig card. I didn't expect myself to be really installing all that much. I didn't expect the ISO itself, of the inbuilt storage. Live and learn, as they say, right? You live and learn. What am I going to do? Well, I did some digging, and the 128 and 256 gig cards are not all that expensive. I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of those. I actually just have to leave to go back home at the time I'm recording this video, so it may be next year before I can try it out. But my plan in the long term is to get the 256 gig card. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get DietPi and just DietPi with GNOME and just leave it there. You know, just build exactly what I know I'm going to need. I have done some digging. Flatpaks run. Everything works, but it's just a little bit slow, right? So I'm thinking DietPi just install exactly what I need, which is going to be Firefox, ungoogled Chromium, a couple of social media apps from Flatpak. Basically, just install Flatpak and go from there. Speaking of Flatpak, I actually have a surprise for you. This was generally unexpected, so I'm going to open up a terminal here, and we'll just demonstration and whatever. So first I'm going to expand. So we're going to go ahead and do a search. Flatpak search. Katawa Shoujo. So, do not know. Is stable, currently sitting on my system. Now, the reason I find that interesting is because if I go to GNOME, and again, it takes for everything. I would say it's a combination of the processor plus the RAM. I'm thinking it's more due to the RAM. So I'm going to go to towershoulder.com. Go ahead and load. You know what's funny is using this, it kind of takes me back to my dial-up days. So I go to download here. We take a look here at the direct download in the torrent, Linux x86, okay? Keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and set and keep in mind too, the Raspberry Pi runs ARM, okay? Runs a Broadcom ARM processor, not an x86. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Flatpak run, and then I have to type in the application. That's the one thing I don't like about Flatpaks, I'll be honest, is particularly with the Raspberry Pi OS, I needed to know this application ID, which is a bit odd. You know, especially for ungoogled Chromium, the description is so long that the application ID gets cut off. So I'm still doing my research. Like I said, I'm thinking DietPi, but what I want to do is I want to have something that natively supports Flatpaks out of the box. I'm debating Manjaro as well, so I'm kind of up in the air about this. If I do run Manjaro, it's definitely going to be GNOME. I realize it's going to be a bit slow on this, but on Silverblue, I run GNOME, and I've gotten to the point, like I said earlier in the video, where I just fly on GNOME, and that's genuinely what I prefer. So we're going to say run com dot. Now check this out. Again, Linux x86. KS is actually running on a Raspberry Pi. When I saw this, I was just completely, I was blown away. I was surprised. I was like, wow, just wow. Now, again, it's going to take a moment to load. It's going to take, I don't know, I've never timed this. We'll just watch the clock. Boop, 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 boop. La 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 la. Oh Lordy, trust me, this does work. Oh, here we go. Now again, I know that you've seen me run this game many times before, but the fact that, again, let me just make sure that I'm not about to skip on the text, because one of my keyboard shortcuts tries to skip. Okay, good. Yeah, I've got it. And yet, right here, it's running. And again, just open the tab and run. I'm going to 2204 LTS March 64. Just the fact that everything, I mean, it's slow, but it runs. Usable. This is a very usable desktop system. Now, aside from those hiccups, have I encountered anything else? Not really. Honestly, everything has gone pretty smoothly. But no, I mean, literally everything just works. Now, I've also been debating running Fedora Silverblue on this, but here's the thing. Fedora is known for not accepting Wi-Fi out of the box. Now, we're making, there's a possibility that I might be able to use an extender here. I don't know yet for sure. If I do, I've already got a plan of how that's going to work. So I just run an Ethernet cable from the Pi, but one of the downsides of using the Pi is, I'll be honest, the 400, it's a bit of a cable mess. I'm using an older monitor that belonged to my late father. He had a computer up here, and the system itself is too old to really be useful at this point. Plus, where I am, I don't really have room for a full tower. That's why I went with the 400. Let me get out of here. Where was I? Oh yeah. So what I've done is this old monitor, it's a VGA monitor, DVI, so I had to buy an adapter. So I've got the adapter running to the Pi's HDMI, got the HDMI to the Pi, I've got the mouse, power, and then I've got a USB hub along with some speakers and a webcam. So the hub is handling the speakers and the webcam, and the hub itself is plugged into the Pi. But because of all the cables that each device takes, you know, the speakers had a pretty good cable length, the hub has a pretty good cable length, the webcam, you know, The only, like I said, the only downfall is this is a genuine cable mess. But it's again, it's very very usable, and the fact that it does have USB-C is a real plus because up here we do get power outages. Unfortunately, where we are, the power lines are above ground, and we are subject to thunderstorms. And so, one of the nice things that I could, in theory, do is if I could get a UPS to run everything off of, and I could have the Pi off of its own battery. Again, this is just me thinking aloud, but it's just the modularity of the system, you know. One of the other interesting things, though, is when I installed Mate and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try another desktop environment because I genuinely do prefer GNOME. So I put GNOME on here. Whenever I log into GNOME, the numlock key comes on and stays on. It's really odd. But no, those are my thoughts. Raspberry Pi after 2 weeks. So again, I think that in the long run, I am going to find another operating system. Definitely going to get a bigger card. 16 gigs is just not enough. In fact, it's terrible. I should have paid extra for the additional card. I live and learn. But overall, I'd say it's a pretty positive experience. Oh, really quick before I go. Yeah, just as a reminder, if you're on Raspberry Pi OS, don't under any circumstances fiddle with the graphics memory because what's going to happen is it's going to split the RAM between the main system and the GPU. And as a result, that is going to brick your system because that's literally what happened to me. When that happened, when the SD card was ejected from the system, there was nothing on there. It went into a boot loop, and that's actually expected because it's trying to find a boot source, right? It's kind of like, for those of you who remember the Apple II days or the Commodore 64 days, it's like that. There's no internal storage. It requires an external, card or something to run. Well, the card was what ended up getting corrupted. That's actually one of the reasons I like this, is because if I need to, like I'm planning to right now, I could just buy an inexpensive card of reasonable capacity, put another operating system on it, pop it in here, and it should work. But I'm going to do my research. Like I said, I'm thinking about either DietPi or Manjaro, something to definitely run GNOME natively without it being much of an overhead. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I apologize for rambling. I had not really rehearsed or had any plans for this video. I just wanted to get it out because I knew that some of you were curious. Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.